Welcome everybody to the Introduction to Easy Language class. My name is Michael Burke and I'll be the instructor for the next 2 days as we go through about 15 or 20 exercises covering all of the new functionality and features of Easy Language objects. Let me start by asking everybody how the sound is. You may need to turn your speakers up a little bit, but just let's do a quick sound check, make sure everybody can hear me okay. And it's not too loud, it's not too choppy. Okay, thank you everybody, I appreciate that. So the purpose of this class is to get you a basic understanding of the way that Easy Language objects work in connection with core Easy Language. What I call core Easy Language is the Easy Language that we've all been using, some of us for many, many years. And it is the language that all of the indicators and strategies within TradeStation are built on. Easy Language Objects is another layer of Easy Language that integrates with core Easy Language, giving you better access to data, better access to events that are happening in the real world, and just more functionality. It also allows us to add features very quickly and easily to Easy Language for different things that we want to accomplish that would be more difficult to accomplish if we were to try to modify TradeStation or we were to try to build in functionality into the C++ code of Easy Language. We can build classes now and we can add functionality very, very quickly. Eventually, we're going to give clients the ability to write their own classes and create their own functionality within Easy Language, but that's something that will happen sometime in the future. The agenda for this class is that we're going to go for an hour or so and take a short break, and we will do that again leading up to lunch. We'll take a little bit longer break at lunchtime. When we come back from lunch, we'll go for about another hour or so, take a short break, and finish up with an hour. So I would expect to be done today somewhere around 3 or 3:30. It just depends on how the pacing goes and how the questions go. I'm joined by my colleague, Jim Glish. Jim Glish is the Help Systems Manager. He's the person who writes all of the help for the TradeStation platform, and for Easy Language, he manages that team. And it's nice to have him with us here. His role here is a couple of things. One is his role is to answer any questions that I don't get to in the chat. Also, if you have any trouble logging on to the presentation, maybe you get kicked off or you're having some trouble, you can always email Jim at this email address, and he'll be happy to help you get back into the room or anything else that you need during the class. Let's talk a little bit about questions. That's another good topic, since that's what Jim is here to help with. Let's try to keep the chat questions on topic. If a question comes to you that is not what we're talking about now, you can either save that question or you can email Jim or myself with that question, and we'll be happy to answer that question by email. So I'm probably not going to stray too far off of the curriculum with questions, but if you do have a question or you need something answered or you're having a problem with something, please feel free to email Jim or myself, and we'll be happy to help you with that. Here's my email address as well. So one of the important things that I want to get across here, and I'm going to probably mention it a couple of times during the day, is that the link for tomorrow. So we're going to get started again at 10:30 tomorrow and pick up where we leave off today. But the link for tomorrow's class is here in the chat. So it's very important that you save that. It's also, that link is also available in the Documents folder in the bottom right-hand corner of the viewer. There's a button there that says Documents. You can click that button, and there are some documents in there I'm going to talk about here in a second. But also in that Documents folder is the link for tomorrow. So this is the link that will work for tomorrow. The link that you have for today will not work tomorrow, so make sure that you save that link somewhere. Maybe click on it, save it in your favorites so that you have it for tomorrow morning. So in the documents folder, there's some information that I want to share with you. First of all, there are 2 PDFs, which I'm going to push into the chat. One of these is the examples of all of the EasyLanguage that we're going to be looking at today and tomorrow. And the other is the workbook, which is basically it's a document, a PDF document that talks about all of the concepts that we're going to cover in this class, so that you have some material to review as far as the topics and all the learning points over the next 2 days. I'm going to be working in TradeStation, obviously, and I'm going to be looking at some workspaces and some EasyLanguage that is pre-built. All of that content is available here in this zip file. So this zip file contains the workspaces that I'm looking at and all of the EasyLanguage exercises. So you'll have all of that to review when the class is over. Now this class is taught as a lecture class. It's not a hands-on class or a follow-along class. I don't expect you to type the exercises as I'm typing them. We have learned through experience over the last few years that this class and all of the EasyLanguage classes are far more effective in a lecture class where you are concentrating on the topics. You're watching me type the exercises, and I found that to be very effective in my own learning of programming languages, that if I can watch someone actually doing the programming, I can pick it up more easily than trying to follow along and just type what they're typing. So that's the format of this class. So at the end of the class, you can go through the exercises, and that gives you plenty of time to retype the exercises and to get familiar with the different procedures for creating indicators in EasyLanguage objects. So that's really the structure of the class. I can tell you I've learned lots of programming languages in my life, and watching someone type the exercises, talk through the concepts as they're programming is a very effective way to learn, and I hope you find it equally as effective as well. All right, we're going to get started, and I just have a couple of more things to cover here. First of all, let's cover just a quick disclosure. All of the exercises, ideas, symbols are for educational purposes only and are not recommendations of those symbols or ideas. Active trading is not for everyone. There is a disclosure document here in the documents folder, which I'm going to push into the chat. And those disclosures are also available on our TradeStation website. All right, so if there aren't any questions, we will get started. So objects in EasyLanguage include a new set of reserve words, some operators, and some new punctuation, along with a vast array of enhanced EasyLanguage functionality and elements. We've also added editing tools to the development environment that facilitate writing indicators using EasyLanguage objects. The great thing is that your existing EasyLanguage code, what I call core EasyLanguage, is unaffected by EasyLanguage objects. Objects simply enhances the functionality of EasyLanguage, giving you better access to data, better access to real-time events, and an incredible array of new features and functionality that you can tap into to create incredibly powerful indicators and tools that you could never create before in EasyLanguage. A lot of people ask me, why do I need EasyLanguage objects? And for a large array of applications in TradeStation, you don't need EasyLanguage objects. If you're writing simple indicators and simple trading strategies, you probably never need to tap into all of the features and functionality of objects. But if you're writing more complex indicators, writing indicators for radar screen, if you need to have interaction with the real world, or you need to pass information to Excel, or you want to know when something changes, something in your account changes, those kinds of things will require EasyLanguage objects. Those features are not available in core EasyLanguage. Certainly, we will see today that there is some duplication of functionality, but objects adds a new level of interaction with the data so that you can capture events and react to events in real time. Some of the features that we're going to cover in this class include accessing data programmatically. This is a feature that customers have asked for many, many years, to be able to ask for a symbol and an interval and some amount of history programmatically within an indicator or strategy, so that I don't necessarily have to add a second data stream to the chart. So it can be dynamic. I can dynamically select a symbol and add it to my calculations. This also allows for multi-data analysis in radar screen, which is an exciting concept where you can create indicators in radar screen that look at multiple symbols or multiple intervals all on one row, something we can't do today in core EasyLanguage. Account data, order information, position information is available in core EasyLanguage now, but we don't have the ability to react when events change. And objects gives us the ability to access account information, positions, orders, and quickly react when something changes. We can look at account balances, we can see the P&L of a position, and then we can react to it. One of the ways that we can react to it now in an indicator is we can send an order ticket and close a position or open a position from an indicator. This is very different from a strategy, where a strategy is a set of rules that's entering orders into the market. A lot of the work is being done as far as managing the position, managing the orders is done for you automatically in a strategy. And that is an incredibly powerful tool. The strategy engine in EasyLanguage gives you a lot of functionality. It gives you a lot of error checking that would be very difficult to do programming it yourself. But for simple orders, to be able to send a simple order to open a position or a simple order to close a position, the order tickets give us that ability now programmatically, allowing us to place orders from an indicator within radar screen, or from charting, or to augment what's going on in a strategy to maybe resync a strategy with the real world. So order tickets are a way that we can easily send an order into the market. But remember, there's no checking, there's no safety catches like there is in the strategy engine. So you've got to make sure that when you send an order, you only send one order, and you have to make just keep track of that order. So it takes a little more programming to get the order tickets to work the way you want it to, but it's a very powerful tool. Global variables allow us to pass information from one chart to another chart, or from one row in radar screen to another row, or across radar screen and charting. This is functionality that has existed for many years in core EasyLanguage through DLLs, but they've never been very efficient, and the global variable, what we call a global dictionary in objects, is much more efficient and now native to EasyLanguage. Same thing with Excel integration. We've always been able to do Excel integration with the DLL, but now it's native within objects. It's very fast, very efficient, and very easy to pump real-time data into Excel, or to grab values from Excel and pump them into an indicator or strategy. I think one of the most exciting parts, though, of EasyLanguage objects is the ability to create your own window and to create your own interface between the real world and TradeStation with a chart or with radar screen. And we can create our own windows that display information. We can create our own order bars. In fact, if you've seen the new chart trading tool within TradeStation, that chart trading tool was completely created with EasyLanguage objects. All of the buttons, all of the orders that are sent to the market are all done using order tickets and the EasyLanguage forms. Incredible functionality. We've made data management much easier using vectors. Vectors are very similar to arrays, except a million times easier to use, and much easier to manipulate data as you're putting it in and out of that vector. And of course, there are dozens and dozens of new features that have been added over the course of the last year, and we'll probably have an advanced EasyLanguage objects class sometime early next year that will talk about all of the new functionality that's available. Things like RSS feeds and being able to address all of the different drawing tools through EasyLanguage. Just a host of things, being able to read and write from a text file, just all the things that you've always wished that you could do using EasyLanguage. All of that functionality is coming coming together with EasyLanguage objects. And once you know the foundation of EasyLanguage objects, they all work the same way. They all have the same methodology to get that functionality to work, and that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to make sure that you have a good foundation on how objects work, how to find all of the different elements that are necessary to make it work, so that as new features are added, it'll become second nature to you to be able to learn those new classes as they come online. So most of you have been working with the new development environment for a while, and you're probably familiar at this point with the autocomplete, which is a great feature. You type a few characters, and it gives you a dialog box that points to the word that you're trying to type, so you can just hit enter, and it puts it in there very quickly. I find this feature amazing because if you declare an input or a variable, it immediately adds it to the autocomplete. So you can very quickly find a complex variable name or an input name, and you don't have to type it out every time. So that's a great feature. Outlining, which I don't use that much. Most of the things I do are usually less than 100 lines of code. But as you write more complex, longer pieces of code, outlining is a great feature. It allows you to block certain pieces of EasyLanguage code and then expand them or shrink them so that the code is more manageable. And I think the best feature of all is the enhanced undo. Enhanced undo actually works even after you've verified, which is something that's brand new. So if you've typed in several things and you want to undo back 20 steps, the enhanced undo will do that for you now, so that you can go back to just about any state. I'm not sure how far back it goes, but it goes back quite a bit. And as I said, it's persistent even through a verification, which is fantastic. The toolbox and the toolbox component tray are what we're going to be using a lot today and tomorrow. Components are objects that are pre-structured, pre-written, so that I can just drag my object, whatever feature in my objects that I want to use, I can just drag it into the indicator, and it sets up all of the programming that would be required to initialize that feature in EasyLanguage objects. And we'll take a look at that code automatically, that's automatically generated as well. Now you can always manually use any of the objects code, just like any programmer would in any high-level language, but the components are great because they allow you initially just to drag and drop what you need into your indicator or strategy, set some properties, and you're using objects. So we're going to go through that pretty extensively over the next couple of days. But I will give you an opportunity tomorrow to create your own objects from the class library. We'll do that with vectors and some other things, so that you get a feel for what is the procedure if I need to use an advanced class or object that is not a component. How do I build that? And you'll have that knowledge after tomorrow. And there's a new enhanced EasyLanguage dictionary. Now the dictionary becomes very important in objects because there is such a vast array of functionality and properties that are associated with all of the different functionality that you need the dictionary to be able to find what features are available in each of the classes, and what are the exact words that I need to use, and what are the parameters that I need to use. So all of that's available in the dictionary. So the dictionary has been enhanced. That's one of the things that Jim's team works on is building that dictionary and the help that is accessible from that dictionary. So he's done a great job on that. So as I said, the toolbox is a drag and drop tool that allows us to use components very easily. The initialization is done for those components, and we can simply concentrate on our logic, and we can concentrate on the rules for our indicator or strategy. So we've tried to make this as easy as possible. This is EasyLanguage after all, but as we get into this more complex, this more advanced programming technique of objects, this is a great way to get started. One of the things that I will tell you is that I've always worked with C++ and C#, so I've always had a good understanding of how objects work. But I can tell you that even in the short time that I've been working with EasyLanguage objects, it's enhanced those skills in C# and C++. And if you've never done any programming in objects, this is a great evolution for you as a programmer. This is going to open up all kinds of advanced level programming languages that you'll be able to pick up much more easier with this basic foundation of EasyLanguage objects. So it's a great benefit to be able to understand these concepts. So the trickiest part of this whole course is this slide, trying to get across the concepts of what is an object. And so we'll go through this, and I'll give you some of my how I think about objects, and it doesn't really matter now that I think about it too much as we go through this, how we describe this. Once you see how it works, then you'll have in your mind what an object is and how it should be described. But let me do my best here. So an object is a tool that can access, it can return, and it can manipulate data. It does this through properties and methods. Now, methods is kind of a new word in EasyLanguage, but a method is really just a function. Now, functions in EasyLanguage are little snippets of code that live outside of our indicators and strategies. Methods are functions that live inside of our indicators and strategies. In other words, a method is some inline code within an indicator or strategy. And objects have methods that live inside of the object. And we can access that method just like we would access a function. And it operates on the data, or it does something that object needs to do, that we need to do in order to perform some action or to look at some data. Objects have descriptive names just like a variable. So there may be a price series provider object that helps me go out and get data from the data network. I can name that object whatever I want to so that I can reference it very easily within my code, so I can make it descriptive. So if I want to go out and get Microsoft, I can create a price series provider that I call PSP Microsoft, so that I know that that particular object is going out and getting data from Microsoft. So I can be very descriptive in my names of a variable. So if we use the variable concept to describe an object, think of an object as a very complex variable that doesn't just hold a value, but can go get values from the data network. And once it gets those data, it can manipulate that data with methods. I can also be updated whenever a price changes, and the object knows about that update and can notify me so that I can perform some action. So this object is a very powerful tool that I can access through properties. And a property is simply a word that gives me access to what the object is doing or what the object can do. So some of the new lingo in EasyLanguage objects, we've already talked about components. So components are objects that are pre-built that I can drag into my indicator or strategy, and it will automatically build the EasyLanguage code for me behind the scenes. But a component is an object. It is just a pre-built object that I don't have to build myself. I can just drag it into my indicator. Objects are, in fact, what this class is all about. Each object is a piece of functionality. And that object is defined by its class. A class is simply a blueprint of functionality, and there may be one or more objects within that class. But the way we access that class functionality is through objects. A class is the blueprint. It describes the features and the behavior of an object. Properties are data values or methods that live inside of the object that allow us to utilize that functionality. And the dot operator is how we reference properties. So let's say that I have an object called PSP Microsoft, and I want to reference the close of the data stream for the current bar. I could say PSP Microsoft.close, where the dot associates the property to the object, and then the object knows that I need to get the close. So the dot operator is how I connect the different properties and describe the different properties that I need to the object, and then it returns the value or it does whatever it needs to do. So the dot operator is new in EasyLanguage. As I described methods, a method is equivalent to an EasyLanguage function, except that it lives inside of our code or it lives inside of an object. Objects have their own methods that we can reference with the dot operator, or we can write methods inside of our indicators and strategies just like a function, except the code is in line with our indicator or strategy. The most important aspect of objects is the next feature in the list, which is events. This is really what sets objects apart from core EasyLanguage. Events are properties of objects that notify us when something has changed. So if I am building a account portfolio calculation and I need to know whenever my account balance changes, an event will notify me of that. And when that event fires, it allows me to run some code. And that code runs only when the event is fired, so that I can react intra-bar to something changing. That's incredible. That is really what makes objects so powerful over core EasyLanguage, that is that ability to intercept those events. And you'll see that here as we write these first few exercises. It's important to remember that events typically fire intra-bar. They fire randomly, anytime. And so when we are capturing that event and we are manipulating data within that event, you have to remember that that event is happening intra-bar. And so any of the variables that we need to use during that event probably need to be intra-bar persist variables so that they hold their value from event to event or from tick to tick. So it's very important that you remember that intra-bar persist becomes critical when working with events. And collections. Collections is how the data is stored within an object. So we're going to use the word collections a lot to describe what the object is working on. So for example, in my PSP Microsoft object, there's going to be a collection of data for me to manipulate. So there's going to be a collection of closes that I can manipulate. I can reference the close of the current bar, or I can reference the close of one bar ago. But that lives in a collection of closes that is managed by the object. So when I request the data, the object creates a collection of closes. It creates a collection of highs. It creates a collection of lows, all relative to each other, all managed just like multi-data is managed within a chart, so that I can manipulate that data just like I would manipulate a multi-data element within the chart. But it could be a collection of accounts. It could be a collection of market depth information. It could be a collection of anything. So a collection is the data that is manipulated by an object. So setting and getting component properties uses the dot operator. And if you look at the example here at the bottom of this slide, you can see that we're saying value1 equals price series provider 1.count. The dot there is how we associate the property count to price series provider. Count is a very important property in all objects. It tells us whether the object exists and if there's any data in the object. So if count is 0, then there's no data in the object, and I can't access the object. If I try to access an object with 0 data in it, I'm going to get a runtime error. So we always use the count property to see if the data is loaded and the object is ready to use. So in this case, this is checking to see if there's collections of the price series provider. And if there is, then it will Give me a number of how many items are in the collection. So the first few exercises we're going to work on is accessing data programmatically. This gives us the ability to very easily and quickly go out to the TradeStation data network, specify a symbol, specify an interval, specify the history that we need, and bring that data into our indicator. Doesn't have to load into the chart. Charts have multi-data analysis. You can add symbols to the chart and reference them with data 1, data 2, data 3, up to 50 data symbols within a chart. With Price Series Provider, there's no limit. You can go out and get 1,000 symbols from the TradeStation data network and manipulate those 1,000 symbols within one indicator, creating your own cool scanning tool or your own index components, and create your own index and plot that index. So there's all kinds of interesting ways that you can use the data programmatically. But this data operates, as I said, just like the data in the chart. So it is aligned historically with the data 1 bars. So all of the rules that apply to multi-data analysis apply to Price Series Provider. Data 1 in the chart still controls. That still controls the way that the indicator is going to calculate and how the data within the Price Series Provider is going to behave. So just remember that the data is aligned automatically for you to the bar. So if I'm on the 50th bar in the chart and I reference the close of my Price Series Provider, it's going to give me the close relative to that bar. It's aligned with that bar. That's a very nice feature so that you don't have to try to align the bars yourself. One of the great things about the Price Series Provider is that it can be used with simple EasyLanguage functions. So I can access the Price Series Provider from the data network. I can bring that data into my indicator, and I can drop that data into the average function or the highest function or the lowest function. It will work right out of the box without any manipulation. So because the Price Series Provider behaves just like the data stream in the chart, it can operate in the same functions as the Price Series data in the chart. That's really a great feature. Now, some functions don't work. If it's a series type function that uses accumulation calculations, the Price Series Provider does not work in those types of functions. It only works in simple functions like highest and lowest and average, those kinds of things. At some point, we will figure out a mechanism for this, but that is much more difficult. And that's something that we are thinking about and figuring out how to make that work easily for programmers. But right now, that's very difficult. But they do work in simple functions, and you'll see that in some of the examples here. So to set up the Price Series Provider, we're simply going to drag the Price Series Provider component into our editor, into our indicator, and we're going to set some properties. Now this is the way that the components work. The drag and drop components work by setting properties. So there's a properties editor inside the development environment that allows you to specify what symbol is the object going to use, what interval is the object going to use, how much history do I want to request for the object. So by setting these properties, it automatically tells the object that this is what I want you to operate on, and when you load the indicator into the chart, the object goes out and gets that data for you automatically and brings it into your indicator for the indicator to use. So the properties are key to making the components objects work exactly the way you want them to. And we will spend a lot of time setting properties in over the next couple of days for all of the objects that we're looking at. So we'll be setting properties. There's property help inside of the properties dialog. We'll take a look at this. It also gives you access to the online help from there, but the properties dialog is incredibly useful for giving us information on how the object, what properties are associated with an object and how those properties are used. Also in the properties dialog, which is not on this slide, is where we create events. Remember, I said that events are really the key feature to objects. And so events are also properties. And so we will create that event within the properties dialog. And that'll automatically create some code in our indicator as well, and you'll see that. So the first exercise we're going to do, very simple. We're going to do a simple multi-data example using objects. We're going to have a 30-minute chart of Cisco, and we're going to use the objects to go out and get the daily bars for Cisco and plot them on top of the 30-minute bars. So very simple. We could do this with multi-data analysis, but we're going to use objects here as a very simple example of how this works. So here I'm going to switch to TradeStation. And at the top of the viewer, you have some choices. You can select fit to screen or no fit, or you can go full screen if you want to. If you go full screen, I think you lose the chat. It's one of the things you lose in full screen. So I'll let you decide how you want to set up your viewer. That's best for you, best for the way that you're looking at this. But you all should be looking at my chart. And you'll see the 30-minute bars here of Cisco. And then the red line is the daily close brought in by the price series provider without multi-data. Up the development environment. And just a little geography here. On the left-hand side is where our toolbox components are. If I put my mouse over that, you can see it slides out. These are all the object features that we're going to be using over the next couple of days. On the right-hand side is the EasyLanguage dictionary. And we'll talk more about the dictionary as we go through some examples here. The dictionary has changed quite a bit over the previous. For those of you who are looking for all of the core EasyLanguage reserve words and functions, those are available here in the EasyLanguage.ell. So each of these ELLs are what we call namespaces, and they are basically just a navigational tool to organize our classes, our objects. And so EasyLanguage.ell is where core EasyLanguage resides. And here you can see all the different reserve words in core EasyLanguage, and at the bottom are the user functions. These are all the snippets of EasyLanguage that are all of the functions that are available. So that's under the EasyLanguage.ell namespace. And then here you can see the properties. And the properties here will give us the ability to manipulate features of our objects. Is anyone having the same problem as Gary? You should be able to see my slideshow, and you should be able to see my development environment here, Jerry. You might be frozen, or you might have a slow connection, Jerry. You might want to try to log out and log back in if that's still the case. Just as a reminder, there are two buttons at the very top of the screen, one that says desktop sharing and one that says slideshow. You have the control of that, by the way. And sometimes when I'm in the slideshow, I will forget that I'm in the slideshow, and I will be talking about what's on my TradeStation, which is on a different monitor. So whenever I do that, Mark, how's that? Did that help the echo? I just made a quick change, Mark, to the, so ask me, the echo is still bad, huh? Is everybody having that echo? Okay, thanks everybody. Okay, Mark, I'm not sure. We're not experiencing that echo here. That might be something to try to refresh. So anyway, those two tabs at the top allow you to switch between the desktop sharing and slideshow. So if that happens, just use those tabs, go back over to whichever one I'm talking about, and just remind me in the chat that I haven't switched over myself. The other thing that might happen when we're in the development environment is that I have noticed that my development environment will sometimes freeze, and we think it's related to copying pasting with the desktop sharing. So if that happens, if you see me freeze, just type in the chat, Mike, you're frozen, and I'll fix that very quickly. I can unfreeze it just by refreshing the desktop sharing. So Jerry, I think it's going to be important for you to log off and log back on if you're still seeing the chart. And I think that might help it. Also, Mark, you were saying that you had an echo, but you are logged on twice. Is it possible that you have two computers running and they both have their speakers on? So there might be a slight delay in that case, because I see you logged on twice. Okay, so I'm just going to wait 1 minute here for Jerry to log back in, and then we will get started. Any questions while we're waiting for Jerry? There he is. He's back in already. Everybody's got their PDFs. Everybody found the documents okay? Great, Jerry. I see you. And so we're gonna get started here. So the first exercise we're going to do is we're going to plot those daily bars on top of the 30-minute bars in the chart. And so here in the development environment, I'm going to go to File, New Indicator, and I'm going to call this I'll call this $$ daily bar close. And so just this using objects is just like creating any indicator. In fact, it is an indicator. It's just tapping into some additional EasyLanguage features. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the toolbox. And in this case, we are going to reference data from the data network. And I'm going to drag the price series provider into my indicator. Notice that it shows up here in my what we call our component tray. This shows all of the different components that are added to the chart. You can have multiple object components added to the same indicator. In fact, we'll do that in several examples over the next couple of days where we may be creating very complex indicators with different object features all built into one indicator and all working together. So once we have the component in the indicator, we can go to the properties and we can set some properties for that indicator. So in this case, the most important thing to set is the symbol. And here I can specify a specific symbol. Notice that it has to be in quotation marks. So here I'm requesting the data from Microsoft if I just need Microsoft. But if I want to match the symbol that's in the chart, or I want to match the symbol that's in the row of radar screen, I can use symbol, which is the reserve word that tells me what symbol's in the chart or what symbol's in the radar screen row. So that's very useful as well. Under interval, this is just like the format symbol dialog in charting. I can specify that I want bars, and I can specify the interval. In this case, I want daily. Notice that we've added seconds. This is a new bar type that we've added just recently in TradeStation. You now create second bars. Here, we'll select daily. And the interval span for daily doesn't really matter. It has to be 1. It would be cool if we could create 2-day bars, but right now we can't. That's something that we're talking about doing in the future. But daily bars are just 1-day bars right now. And then the next thing is how much history do we want to load into the chart? In this case, I'm going to load 500 bars. This is really relative to how many bars are in the chart, and you can match that up programmatically later on in a more advanced version of this indicator. You could try to match the data that's in the chart to the properties. Cameron, I see your question. Right now, the only type of bars that you can really build right now are either based on time frames. I'm sorry. Let me go back up here to the interval. So in the interval, you can see we only allow bars based on time or on volume. So you can't use the price-based charts yet, but that would be something that would be cool. Matthew, I'm not sure what you mean by interval span. Can you be a little more descriptive of what you mean by that? So just to review, we set the symbol, we set the interval, and we set the range. Interval span. I see it now. Thank you. Apparently, that's not a good name for that description for that interval span. Is, for example, if I have a 15-minute bar, the span would be 15. If it's a 30-minute bar, it'd be 30. So that's what that means. On daily, weekly, and monthly, it's just 1 because we don't have it. We don't have multiples of those yet. So sorry, that's what that means. At the top, you'll notice that there are some switches. So do you want the data in real time? Yes. What time zone do you want? Do you want to use local or exchange? And do you want it to load on when you insert the indicator into the chart? And so all of those are set to true. Peter, absolutely. That's a great example. If you set it to ticks, the interval span is the number of ticks. Perfect. That's a great example. We can name the price series provider something else just to make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to call it PSP, just so I don't have to type out price series provider 1 every time. And I'm going to exit the properties. Notice that in my component tray, it now changes to PSP. So that's the object. That's how I will reference that object. All right, so plot 1 is my PSP. And I want to reference the close. So I'm going to select close. And just like any reference of data, I need to, in this case, specify the relative position of that close to the bar in the chart. Remember, they're aligned. So close bracket 0 means that I want the current close for the bar in the chart. Now in the chart are 30-minute bars. And these are daily bars. So they are going to align, only on that last 30-minute bar, just like they would if it was multi-data analysis. So I cannot, we do not have momentum bars yet. So we cannot do momentum bars. We're hoping to do that at some point in the future, but right now we can't do that. And we'll give this plot a name. We'll call it daily close. But you can see how simple that is. We simply dragged the component into the indicator. We set the symbol, the interval, and the amount of history to load. And to access it, we simply reference the object, use the dot operator, and the property we're looking for is the close. Notice the other properties that are available for the PSP. When you hit the dot operator, it brings up a list, which is very helpful, of all of the different properties that are available for that object. So if it's a property, it has this little purple box. So you can see it's close, there's high and low. I'm sorry, let's go back. If it has the little hand, the box with the hand, not purple, that's a property. So anything, the box with the little hand is a property. Anything that is the little purple box is a method. So that's like a function that operates on the data. So primarily we look at the properties like close or high. There's count that we talked about, high. Many properties allow you to get data, and many properties allow you to set the parameter that you want to set for the object. Sometimes you can set and get information from the same property. Really, to know what each of these properties, what they do, you need to go to the dictionary and look at the help. So it's impossible for anyone to know what every one of these does every time you come in here. We're not going to go through what each property and every object does. But it gives you an idea of what kind of features and what kind of data points are available simply by hitting that dot operator. A lightning bolt is an event. So a lightning bolt tells you if that's a property that can be an event, so that when something changes, then I can react to that. Here you can see a price update. So here I'm going to press F3 and verify this. And it doesn't verify because I have two dots in there. I want you to notice in the output that it tells me that I have an error, and it tells me what line that error is on, which is very useful. If you double click on the error, it jumps you to the code where that error is. Again, very useful. Whenever you have an error in EasyLanguage, and this applies even to core EasyLanguage, often you'll get multiple errors here in the output bar. And most of those will probably get fixed if you just fix the top one. A lot of times the top error is what's causing all the other errors to occur. So fix the top one and verify, and chances are most of the other errors will go away. That's a good rule for doing any programming in EasyLanguage. So there's our price series provider. And it plots our red line. Now, just like any indicator, we're going to right-click and go to Properties. So this should all be second nature to all of you. At this point, whenever you create an indicator, you're going to go to Scaling, and you're going to specify whether the indicator plots on the bars or whether the indicator plots in a subgraph, which is right axis. Left axis and no axis, those are used to overlay indicators, and typically you don't use those to create the indicator. Those are used later on in the chart. So in this case, we want it to plot on the bars. We're going to say same axis as underlying data. We're going to change the indicator to plot just a little bit thicker, and we're going to make it a red color. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to verify this again. And there's our indicator. The next exercise we're going to do is very similar to this one. The only difference is that we're going to plot the daily close, and then we're going to plot an average, a 10-bar average of that daily close on the 30-minute bars as well. So here, we're using the price series provider in the average function, and plot 2 is a 10-bar average of the red line. So this gives us an example of how we would take the price series provider and apply a calculation to the price series provider. In this case, we're applying an average to the price series provider so that we can plot an average of the daily closes. So here I'm going to go to the development environment. And since this is already set up exactly the way we need it, I'm going to go to File, Save As, and make a copy of 1 and call it, this is number 2. And this is daily bar close average. So here, we want to make sure that the price series provider has enough history in order to calculate the average that we're looking for. So let's create an input, which will be our average length. And we'll make that 10 bars. So we want to make sure that we have 10 bars in our price series provider before we try to calculate the average. Otherwise, we could get an error or we would get some value that was incorrect. So what we'll do is we'll do a test before we calculate and plot the average. We'll say if price series provider dot count is greater than average length, that means that we have at least 10 bars. We'll actually have 11 bars inside of the collection of closes. So we know that we have enough bars in order to calculate the average. If that's true, then plot 2 will be the average, and this is just so cool. I can simply say the price series provider dot close for our average length. And we'll call this average close. So here we're using the standard EasyLanguage average function. For the series value, we are plugging in our price series provider dot close. That's the collection of closes. Notice that I don't use brackets here because we're referencing the entire collection of closes. We're not referencing one specific close as we did here. Here we're referencing all of the closes and dropping them into the average. Now remember, the average function operates relative to the bars in the chart. So this is going to be the current bar and 9 historical bars inside of the PSP, just like it would be if these bars were in the chart. So it operates exactly the same way, which gives us a lot of functions that we can apply directly to the price series provider. That is really, really cool. So things like average, highest, lowest, anything that's a simple function we can use and apply to the PSP. And so here I'll verify this. And it gives us our average close. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. Then let's take a short, let's say a short 8-minute break. Grab a coffee or a soda, and we'll come back in 8 minutes and pick up where we left off using multi-data analysis in radar screen, something you cannot do currently in core EasyLanguage. So this is really exciting. So we'll look at multi-data analysis in radar screen. So let's come back in 8 minutes.